Hey, you guys, glad you're back with us for our next edition of Ironman Valentine's edition. Now, by the time you watch this, if you're watching this, this will be way past Valentine's Day. Now, the fact that I wore a red shirt is strictly coincidence. If any of you men are like me, you woke up this morning, I had no idea it was Valentine's Day. And in fact, if my wife's watching this, you'll get a card if you haven't gotten one already. But anyway, yeah, Valentine's Day is not just it's not a huge deal with us. I know it is for a lot of men and their wives, but anyway, we're glad to have you here with us today as we go through Mark chapter 5. Last week, we talked about in Mark chapter 4, Jesus and his disciples run a lake. Jesus said, I need to go to the other side of the lake. And while they were there, if you remember, a big storm came up. It was windy and it was tossing and turning. The seas were rough, and Jesus was sleeping through the whole thing. And they woke him up and said, Rabbi, our teacher, how can you sleep through all of this? And he stood up and he rebuked the wind and he sat back down, probably laid back down. And the disciples, it says, were afraid because of this awesome power. And we're going to see that same word here in a little bit in our next teaching today. But Jesus had an appointment. He got to the other side, and the first person he runs into, and this is what we're talking about today, is he runs into a man, it says, of an impure spirit, and you're going to see just how impure that spirit was. But he had been living amongst the tombs. They'd said that the locals couldn't chain him up. He was like this wild animal type figure that was breaking chains on his wrists, almost like handcuffs he was breaking out of. It says leg irons couldn't hold him. He was cutting himself. He was mutilating himself. As we know, in today's terms, people that are cutting are usually looking for attention. There's depression. This guy was an absolute outcast in his society, and he was dangerous. So rightfully so, people didn't really want much to do with him, but Jesus sought him out. And that's one of the lessons we have today is that, Jesus looks for people, and he goes to people. The parable of the lost sheep, where he's happy with the 99 are there, but he always goes after the one that's lost. And that's how we should be too. We need to be able to go towards difficult people, towards people that are outcasts in society, and take the love of Jesus with us when we do that. But as Jesus approached, this guy ran to him and he fell down on his knees in front of him in verse 7 of Mark chapter 5. It says, what do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? It says, in God's name, don't torture me. For Jesus had said to him, come out, you impure spirit. Then Jesus asked him, what is your name? And in verse 9, he says, my name is Legion, for we are many. Okay, let's stop there for a minute. That is super creepy. Okay, so the fact that this guy had multiple demons in him and made him so strong that he was breaking chains, we see that this is a very dark, powerful, troubled person. And they said, he said, don't torture me, Son of God. Well, Jesus isn't really known for torturing people, but we also haven't seen a lot of encounters where Jesus is confronting demons either. So we see that the demons say, hey, just don't make us leave the region. Like, we're comfortable here. I don't know if they were afraid that Jesus was going to send them back to hell or what their fear was, but they said, send us into those pigs. So Jesus obliged, and he sent them into this herd of pigs that numbered 2,000. Okay, 2,000 pigs is a lot of stinking pigs, no pun intended. So these pigs went charging off the edge of this cliff down into a lake, and it says they all drowned. Okay, I don't know if this was Jesus kind of knowing what was going to happen to the demons, but they're all, the pigs are drowned. And I started looking at this, and I started thinking about what a financial loss this would be for the animal's owners. So for the farmer or even the village, if it was multiple owners, if you do this in math in today's finances, 2,000 pigs times about $650, which is what a hog had said on the internet was worth, you're at $1.3 million, okay, in loss that just ran off the hill and drowned in the lake. So these people, and sort of rightfully so, they want Jesus to go away, leave us alone, get lost. And then on top of that, now it's almost like a Jonah type story. they've got this character that they've despised, that has probably tortured these people as they were in the area, that scared them, that maybe attacked them at some point. And now it says he is sitting there in his right mind. So now they've got a person who is completely normal, that Jesus cast out all of the demons. And it says that they were afraid. And that's the same word that the disciples were afraid when they saw Jesus calm the seas. These people were afraid because they saw this man in his right mind. Jesus is more powerful than Satan. This is lesson number 1 here. Okay, this man was completely restored. Anybody you know who's lost can be completely restored. And those who had seen what happened, it says they went and told everybody. And then everybody from the town came to plead Jesus to leave. Now, we don't know if they were just scared, they were fearful of this kind of power struggle that just happened. We don't know if there's a financial reason of why they left, why they wanted him to leave. You know, don't cause us any more financial problems. But we do know that they were scared. And it says that this man, we don't know his name, wanted to follow Jesus. He wanted to be one of his disciples or followers. But Jesus said to him, and this is interesting because Jesus usually says, you know, after he heals somebody up till now, don't tell anybody. But right here he says, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. So then in verse 20 it says, he went away and began to tell people in the Decapolis, which means 10 cities, of how much Jesus had done for them, and they were all amazed. So all of these people that heard this man's testimony were amazed. This is why Jesus wouldn't let him follow. Jesus had another plan. He had another mission for this guy. You know, I mean, sure, it would have been good for him to follow along, but it was more important for this guy to go back to his cities, okay, and tell people, the Gentiles, about him. Now, this is sort of a love story, this whole chapter, because we see that Jesus loved this person enough to go to one of the creepiest places around, okay, a graveyard, okay, with a guy walking around with chains and all of that. Jesus loved him enough to seek him out. I'm sure the disciples were freaked out. The second part of this love story we see is where Jesus is approached by a synagogue leader named Jairus. Well, Jairus comes to him, and as you know about synagogue leaders, most of them were stirring up trouble for Jesus, but this particular one believed in Jesus, and he had faith in him. Because when his daughter was dying, he came to Jesus and said, come, if you can just lay your hands on her, she'll be healed. It says this in verse 23, and she will live. So Jesus went with him. Well, now the crowd starts hearing what's going on. Ooh, Jesus is about to heal somebody. He's about to raise somebody from the dead, or he's going to heal this sick person. So everybody wants to see. So they're crowding the streets on his way to Jairus' house. Well, as he's walking down the street, this is the story. We get an interruption. We get a great heavenly interruption here where this lady who has been bleeding for 12 years, it said, menstrual type problems, she is crowding forward to touch Jesus. If she can just touch his garment. Okay, she has so much faith that even if I just touch like the tassels on his robe, okay, I can be healed. So while all these people are pushing and crowding around him, she's able to sneak in there and just get a hold of the garment. And Jesus stops. He can feel the power go from him. And he says to his disciples who are around him, who touched me? And it was Peter or one of the disciples said, Lord, he said, all these people are touching you. How can you say that, who touched me? He said, no, I felt something come out. I felt the power come out of me. So he looks around and he finds this woman and she says, yes, it was me. And, you know, everybody is mad at her because she's considered unclean and all this kind of stuff. But he says to her, he calls her my daughter. He says, daughter, he said, your faith has made you well. There's nothing magical about her garment, about his garment. You know, it was her faith that was able for Jesus to do the miracle. So while all that is going on, okay, now Jairus is standing there. Jesus tells her to go in peace. You're free from your suffering. Now he goes on to Jairus' house. He gets there and they're saying it's too late. She's already died. And all the mourners and the wailers are there and everybody, they're playing the flutes and all that stuff. And Jesus comes in with his 3 disciples, his inner group, and he comes in and he tells them, clear everybody out. So they do. They get them all out except for the mother and the father. They go up to the daughter's room. Jesus prays over her. Well, first of all, he tells the people downstairs she's not dead. He says she's only sleeping. And I found this very odd. They all started laughing. They started laughing. Okay, well, I don't know what was so funny about this. Maybe this was just their way of handling a weird situation. But anyway, after they cleared them out, Jesus and his 3 disciples and the parents went up to the daughter's room, and he pulls the cover back and he prays and he tells her this. He took her by the hand, verse 41, and he said to her, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And immediately she stood up. Okay, this is about Jesus caring. He stopped everything he was doing. He heard about a person in need. He didn't mind being interrupted by the woman who was bleeding. Okay, he knew that by hesitating like that, the girl was going to die. But to Jesus, that was nothing. That was no big deal at all for him. Whether he healed a girl who was running a high fever or he raised someone from the dead, to Jesus, it's all just in a day's work. So he gives them, afterwards, he tells her to get something to eat, but he gives them strict orders. It says in verse 43, not to let anyone know about this at all. Okay, so Jesus is telling a different story now than he did with the man on the other side of the lake who had been freed from all those demons. He told him, go tell everybody. Now he's saying, don't tell anybody, okay? Because now he's around his enemies. Now he's around people that are going to try to keep him from completing the mission that he has. Okay, he's back amongst the Jewish people, back amongst the Pharisees, all those people that were around that were trying to make him stumble on the mission that he had ahead of him. So Jesus sometimes would tell people, don't tell. He would tell sometimes people, tell everybody. He didn't even tell the lady he healed anything. He just said, go in peace. You know, you've been healed. Jesus handles situations different all the time. It's not cookie cutter with any of us. Some people he heals, some people he doesn't heal. We don't know, but we do know the story of faith here between the woman who touched his garment and Jairus, the man whose daughter died. Both had tremendous faith, and we can learn from that, that Jesus can heal if he wants to, but it takes great faith on our part to approach him and believe in those things. You guys, happy Valentine's Day, belated. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.